When I was 13 years old, I bought my first Rush album. I got my mom to take me to the record store, and I was looking for a specific album by Rush, an album called All the World's a Stage. I'd heard it played at school, and I thought these guys were everything that I was looking for. Back in the day, it was really hard to find music. The music industrial complex decided for you what you wanted to hear, what your tastes were, and in that old record store, it was very hard to find the album that I wanted. So I couldn't find All the World's a Stage. Instead, I found this album by Rush, the only one they had, called 2112. I'm like, that cover is so cool. I'm taking that home. I took it home to my mom and dad's old Motorola phonograph, the one with the felt cover on top of the turntable, the old stylus. It was all built in. I carefully took the vinyl out of there the way we did back in the day. You couldn't touch the edges. You had to be super careful. And I dropped it on the turntable. And I turned it all the way up. And I started to rock. What an amazing album this was. It was everything that I hoped it would be. But of course, Mom showed up within minutes and said, "Turn that down." She was an angel in the sense that she put up with all of my BS. So I turned it down and I picked up the album again. Because back in the day, when you bought an album, you would read the liner notes. You can't do this anymore with digital music. And I think you lose something with that because you don't get to see the band, you don't get to read the lyrics, you don't have any context for the music that you're listening to. And of course you can see here, there's that cool Starman again. The band is all decked out in kimonos. We won't judge them for that. But over here is what mattered, the lyrics, the thing that I was listening to. 2112 itself is a story about a future place where there is a temple, and the priests of the temple have determined from the top down, in a very Orwellian way, that the things you read and the songs you sing. Everything is predetermined, everything is the same. Individualism, creativity, entrepreneurship are discouraged, and they want it that way so that everyone is happy and safe and the same. Well, the hero in this story discovers a guitar, and he learns that he can make music with this guitar. He takes it to the priest and say, "Check this thing out. This is the most beautiful thing. Imagine what it could do for the people." And they crush his guitar, and they crush his soul in the process. He actually ends up apparently committing suicide at the end of this song cycle. And I start to think about that, and it really resonated with me. But as I'm reading these lyrics, right at the top, 2112, lyrics by Neil Peart with acknowledgement to the genius of Ayn Rand. And I'm like, who's this dude? Who's this dude called Ayn Rand? I've never heard of this person, but it's an interesting name. It's in the back of my head. A couple weeks later, a couple months later, I don't remember anymore, I proceed to discover her book, Anthem. And once I devoured that book, I realized that this album and that song cycle was based specifically on what Ayn Rand had conceived of. I followed those breadcrumbs back in the day, the same way that I couldn't find the album that I wanted in the record store. I couldn't find the books I wanted in the bookstore either. There was no Amazon. You had to search really hard to find books after Anthem to discover what she was all about. I didn't know it at the time, but unbeknownst to me, the band Rush went through a tremendous battle, arguments and knockdown dragouts with the record company, because this is what they wanted to do. It is not what the record company wanted at all. They wanted something that would sell. They wanted something that fit their preconceived notion of what I wanted to hear, much like the priests at the temple had already decided for society what it was that they would listen to. When you listen to Neil Peart talk about the mindset that he was going through, he wasn't making a political statement. He wasn't looking to endorse Ayn Rand's objectivism in full. He was just raging against the machine. He had this whole world coming down on him, telling him, this is the kind of music you will make. And instead they did this. It was kind of an FU to the record company. But of course, it was also the launch of what would turn into one of the most productive and successful careers of any rock band. And it all started because they had a little bit of faith that their customers would actually appreciate something better than average. And this was my gateway to Ayn Rand. As it turns out, Ayn Rand also went through that same creative destruction process where publishers and critics and everybody that thought that they knew better told her every step of the way that what she was doing would not sell. She's actually a refugee of the Bolshevik Revolution, arrived in the United States almost penniless at the age of 21, and created herself from the bottom up. She had that same rage against the machine. She saw what the Bolsheviks did to her dad's small business, and she wasn't about to let that happen in the United States. So she wrote Anthem. She wrote Anthem, and it was just rage against this idea of collectivism. It was a celebration of what would happen if individuals chose for themselves. It was a theme that she would play over again and again and again as we got into The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And it all started with her willingness to buck the system and stand for herself. It started my journey to where I am today and what I do for a living. And it all started with Rush in 2112.